Hello everyone, my name is Pat. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm bringing you guys my March wrap-up. Alright, so I finished 17 books and DNF 1. So let's get started. The first one is an arc. This one is City of Dusk by 𝐻𝐻𝐻. This one came out March 22nd, so it's been already out for a few days now. And this one I rated 3.5 stars. This is an adult fantasy book, first book in a series, and I already talked about this in my March arcs, like the ones that are coming out in March. And I found this one very action-packed. There's a lot of characters to follow, and it took me so long to finish this book because after reading 10 to 15% of the book, I had to stop and like reread everything because I couldn't understand anything. And we're following 5 main characters, but also I think 2 to 3 other characters, like 2 to 3 other points of views. So we have 4 main protagonists, but we're also following other people. A lot of world building that needed to be done. So it lost me a lot on that, like the world, the magic, and the politics of the world, how the kingdom works. It was very complicated that I was really like confused a lot of times. But the second half though, I had a better understanding of the world and the characters. Although I was still not sure like who was who outside of the main characters that we're following. I was still able to, mostly follow the story. And by the last 150 pages, that's when it really picks up. That's when the conflict happened, and I really enjoyed that part. I am interested in reading the next series, but I felt like this first book was just a little bit too info dumpy. And although it's necessary to really build the world and the magic and all that, it just lost me a lot. I still enjoyed it, but I feel like the world building could have been a little bit better and not as confusing as it had been. That's my personal experience of it. But again, with the way that things happened and the twists and turns that we had in the story, I'm very much interested in reading the second and the next book in the series, and let's see if I will continue it. And then I joined the Koreadathon for March, and I already talked about these books in my Koreadathon wrap-up, my Koreadathon review, so I'm just going to go through them as quickly as I can. So the first one that I finished was Winter in Xoxo. This is the group book, and this one I rated 4.5 stars. This is very short. This is a literary fiction, and this is following a main character who lives in Xoxo, which is a town in the border of North and South Korea. She's working at an inn, and she meets this French artist, this French author, who visits Xoxo to make it the inspiration for his next work. They form a very uneasy relationship. She acts as a tour guide for him to discover like genuine Korea. Very character driven. There's not a lot of things happening, but there's a lot of social and personal character wise that is happening with our main character. We are also kind of following her life and her perspective in the way that she lives, because she herself is half French, but she didn't know who her father is, but she majored in French literature as well. So it's kind of her trying to get to know her other roots through this school in this small town. The way she's also treated as someone who is mixed, her as a woman living during this time, and the pressure to get married, to have a family, and what she wants to do for the rest of her life. A lot of symbolisms present in here, and underlying messages and underlying presentations of what this character is going through that I mentioned in my reviews that I feel like I'm not able to like really dissect properly myself. I read quite a few reviews on this book where they talk a little bit more about what some of the moments, some of representations that are in here are made or presented. It's very impactful for a very short story. And then I read another very heavy book, Human Acts by Han Kang, a historical literary fiction. And I read her previous book, The Vegetarian, and I really enjoyed that one. That one is more of a psychological fiction, but also has underlying explorations in its own way of being a woman in South Korea. And here we are dealing about Gwangju uprising in the 80s. So this spans through the time of the Gwangju uprising up until I think early 2010s or early 2000s. The effects of that Gwangju, the very violent Gwangju uprising, still felt up to this day by a lot of the people that directly had experiences of it or had loved ones who perished or were tortured during that time. But it's another one that it's an important book to read, and it's not just Korean people. What it talks about historically about what happened in South Korea, how that affected. It's very character driven as well. We are following these characters and the things that they've went through, and it's looking at history in a different lens, in a more personal lens. We're seeing what these people experience and not just the facts during this time, not just the main things that happened during this historical moment. We're looking at the people who experienced it. I don't think I mentioned it, 5 stars. And then I read a manhwa called Die Please. I rated this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed this one. I just wanted a little bit more exploration of the characters, and there are some like questions that I had plot wise that weren't really answered, or I felt like were plot holes, but I enjoyed the discussion of friendships here and also family, finding those connections, about also forgiveness. It's a fun but also dealt with a lot of heavier topics because it deals with these characters that want to kill this other character for apparently no reason in the beginning. Like, it's flabbergasting, like why would you want to kill this person kind of thing. 4 stars, I enjoyed it. And then another heavy book, Xoxo Smile. This one is by Chae-Young. This is a collection of short stories. The main theme for this is the different relationships that you form through life and how those relationships end, the different ways that those different relationships end. Sometimes it's growing apart because you're not talking, or growing apart because you are talking, but there's like a veil, a certain wall that you guys don't cross. And over time, you just realize that either you viewed this relationship and this person in rose-tinted lenses, I guess, and as time went by, you realize that this person isn't really someone who you would want in your life, or you're both at this certain point in your life great to be around each other, but then as you both grow and change from each other, it's just time for you guys to go your own separate ways because your friendship isn't a good relationship anymore. Or there is one story that was very, very personal for me because it's something that I experienced a lot, and something that, because it's pretty frustrating and open-ended, there's a lot of questions going on that you don't get answers to, and that's how the relationship ends. And sometimes you don't have full understanding of it, and that's why it's very difficult when those kinds of relationships, and it was emotional to read. So this one I rated 4.25 stars. But the last 2 stories I felt like were just a little too like forcing you to cry kind of thing, or forcing you to get emotional type stories. In a way, I didn't connect as much, but it felt like that's the emotion that those 2 stories were trying to get out of you. But aside from that, I still really enjoyed like the overall exploration of the different characters in here as well. And then I read The Red Palace by Junher. This is a historical fiction. It is one of my highly anticipated releases for this year, and I really enjoyed this one. I read this one at 4.75 stars. Now, I've read all of Junher's books so far. My favorite is definitely this one, and then the first one, and then the second one. I love the vibes in here. It definitely reads a lot like maybe if you've watched the K-drama Six Flying Dragons, maybe not with the same complexity as that, but it has that same kind of vibe to it. The same kind of atmosphere. It's very dark. There's a lot of intense moments. There's a mystery going on. There's murder happening. There's people dying, and there's court politics as well. And I really enjoyed it. When I think of the Red Palace, I think kind of Six Flying Dragons, but in a more YA setting. It's still gory. There's still murder and mystery and things happening in here, but I love the twists that we got. It adds layers to the story itself. And it's not just a twist that was hidden. It's kind of, you don't really see the twist coming, but it makes sense once you kind of understand the twist itself. And it was a lot of fun to read. I really, really, really enjoyed this one, and so definitely looking forward. So I was so glad because I was very excited for this release. So the next one that I finished is XOXO by 𝐞𝐸. This is a YA contemporary romance following Jenny, who lives in Los Angeles, and meets Jae-woo. Spend this whole day together, and they got to know each other very well. Jae-woo had to go back to South Korea, and they lost touch since then. But then Jenny moves to South Korea to take care of her ailing grandmother, and there she discovers that Jae-woo is actually a member of one of the most popular K-pop groups in South Korea. And it's also school setting. It gave me a lot of like school, is it 2021? The one with Kim Sejong kind of vibe. And there's no like serious undertone in here, but it's definitely, those kinds of school setting romances. It's very cute. It's very fun. There's a lot of tropes, especially if you're not used to watching K-dramas and, seeing these cheesy, cringy moments. It might be a little too much for you. But this one I rated 4 stars. I really, really enjoy this one. And again, if you love K-dramas, I'll recommend this one, especially like the teenage romance dramas. Then I read 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I was actually reading this one before the Koreadathon started, so I had to like put this down and pick it up again, and I rated this one 5 stars. This was so good. I feel like a lot of people have probably talked about this one because it's one of, I feel like it's the highly hyped and well-deserved, to me personally, books that we talk about throughout book 2, book talk even. And this is an adult romance following 2 authors, Ava Mercy and Shane Hall. There's a lot of trigger warnings in here. There's a lot of things that these 2, when they met years ago during those 7 days as teenagers, went through, and a lot of things that they've gone through even after that. So check the trigger warnings, check the content warnings for this one because it's very heavy. But the love story, it's not just romance, it's a love story between these 2 characters and them finding how they belong with each other again, or if they belong with each other again, or if they ever really will belong to each other. So again, I really enjoyed this one. 5 out of 5 stars. I love this. I don't know if you can see, I have a lot of tabs on there. It's not even like a lot, but these are just some of the ones that I was able to like mark as I was reading this. It was very, very good. I loved it. I love the two characters. I love how they got together, and just for me, they deserve this kind of happiness, especially when they're together. They deserve the kind of happiness that they get from each other more than anything, you know. And then another one that I really enjoyed is The Diary of Blood by S.D. Gibson. This is, I think, this is part of my TBR jar picks, and this is one of Book Talk's favorite books. It's very short. This is a historical fantasy literary, I think, as well. A lyrical and dreamy reimagining of Dracula's brides, and it's a story of desire, obsession, and emancipation. And this was so good. This is in second person perspective, so we're kind of reading the letter Constanta writes to Dracula after she kills him, her story and how they met, their story, and how, you know, their relationship developed throughout the centuries that they were together, and what led to her killing him and the relationship that they have. And it's very dark, it's very atmospheric, there's a lot of things going on, and you can really tell that Constanta cares so much for Dracula, or at least wants to care about him in her own genuine but also twisted kind of way. She wants to see him as the savior who gave her the second life, and in a way that he did. There's a lot of prices to pay. He's not the savior she thought he was. It's really good, reason why it's highly hyped. But if you're not into character driven books, then you would probably not like this one, because we don't really get a lot of plot, although it spans centuries. We're focusing on the relationship and how the relationship changes, and how, you know, when these other concubines of Dracula come in, how those relationships kind of evolve and change as well, and the things that are going on within Constanta and the concubines themselves as well. So highly enjoy this one. I had a lot of fun. There's a reason why it's highly hyped. Again, if you don't like character driven books, you will not like this, but if you do and you like pretty psychological stories, I love this so much. And then I DNF'd Dragonsitter by Zica. This is the other manhwa that I was planning on reading during the Koreadathon. I was able to get to. So the books that I was planning on getting to in a Koreadathon, I still read them in this month, and I was able to get to them, all of them, and this is one of them. But I DNF'd this one because I saw that this has a romance tag in manga. So in my head, even though the main character, the main lead, even though the hero, I guess you could say, is a dragon, and, you know, he's lived hundreds of years compared to this human who's lived her. In my head, she's an adult, but they meet when she was 13. She's the dragon sitter for this really difficult dragon who enjoys drinking. They fall in love when she's 15, turning 16. So, not a big fan of that. When I realized that that's what's going to happen, because when I saw that she was 13, because it was already told in the beginning that she was 13, I thought, oh, maybe they're going to have like a dad-daughter relationship, and she's going to have a romance with another person that's going to be important in both of their lives. But nope, they can have a romance together. It's different when she's an adult. If she was like in her mid-20s, I'm fine. I thought she was going to be in her mid-20s, but no, she was 13. So now I DNF'd it when I realized that that's where it was going. Yeah. And the next two books are arcs that I talked about in my arcs I read in March video. This one is Hotel Magnifique by Emily J. Taylor. This one comes out April 5th, and I rated this one at 3.75 stars. This is one of my most anticipated releases of the year because it's compared to The Night Circus, and the basic premise is there's a darkly magical hotel that changes destination every morning. There was a lot of things that the main character was doing that I didn't really enjoy, and to me, her impulsive decisions were used as a tool for the world building and magic building, because in this world, magic is known. Very rare for someone to wield magic, so they don't know anything really about magic, and you know the repercussions and the consequences of magic and all that. But the vibes was really good. I enjoyed the last part of it when we got to the main conflict. I love the kind of sinister undertone of the magic, and, you know, the overall story I enjoyed a lot. It's not very cohesive in terms of how she was introduced in the beginning. So, You Are More Than Magic by Minda Harts. I rated this one at 5 stars. This is a non-fiction guide for brown and black girls to find their space in this world. And I hoped that this book, after I got into it, would be the kind of book that I wish I had when I was younger, and it was that. I felt like it would be very beneficial to a lot of teenagers because it talks about friendship, it talks about self-advocacy, it talks about having difficult conversations, how to stand up for yourself, and, you know, how to protect yourself as well. And I feel like I would have gotten a lot if I read this one when I was younger. And then the next one is Nourished and Fire by Danielle L. Jensen. This is also part of my TBR jar pick, and this one I rated a 4.5 stars. I really enjoy this one. This is, I think, a Roman Empire inspired story. We are following 3 different characters: a commander, a soldier, and a rebel. So commander is Marcus, the soldier is Agrippa, and the rebel is Silvara. And this is mainly following Silvara and Agrippa's relationship, and, you know, how they fall in love with Silvara being a rebel and, you know, Agrippa being the enemy. This is a prequel to Danielle Middleton's series, Dark Shores. I was initially planning on reading the rest of the series, but now I'm not so sure. We'll see if, you know, maybe I'll try to read like a few pages of Dark Shores and see if it's something that I want to continue reading. But I did have a lot of fun reading this one, even though it's pretty short, but it's still long enough you could still call this a novel, just a short novel. I really enjoyed following our main characters. The tension and the way their relationship forms, it was very cute. Okay, I really enjoyed reading it. So, and then I read Crying in H Mart by Michelle Donner. This is another one that was part of my Koreathon TBR. This is a memoir, journey through grief and losing her mother to cancer, and it's definitely emotional. I was actually filming one of my read with me's while I was reading this one, and it was during that moment when it got pretty emotional, and I held it together, so I didn't cry while I was filming that read with me. It's also like her grief and her identity as an American Korean, her relationship with her mother growing up, and her relationship with her father as well, and how that has changed throughout the years, and with them going through with her mother battling cancer and essentially what happened after as well. Korean American community that they have, and it's a lot. It deals very heavily with being a caretaker for someone who has cancer, and you know, having to make a lot of difficult decisions as well, and difficult, heartbreaking decisions. So I really enjoyed this one, 5 out of 5 stars. It's really hard to rate memoirs or autobiographies or biographies, anything, because it's someone's story. Like, how do you rate someone's story? Like actual real life story, you know? But I really enjoyed this one. And then I read Kikis Delivery Service by Eiko Kadono. This is another one that is part of my TBR jar, and this one is the book that the movie, the Studio Ghibli movie, was based on, and I wanted to read all of the books first before I watched the movies. But I really enjoyed this one. Very cute. This is a coming of age story. This one I rated 4.25 stars, although it was a little weird to me, but I guess it's like the middle grade kind of fantasy that you'll have, where the main character Kiki is 13 years old, and they have this coming of age tradition as witches that they have to live a year away from their parents and find kind of like their purpose as a witch as like a 13-year-old. I mean, you know, I guess so. I really enjoyed this one. Very, very cute. And you know, it's the type of story where with her starting her like kind of own business and learning through that, and also learning about people, and there's like lessons learned every chapter, every few chapters, as she meets and helps these people. So yeah, really enjoyed this one. I'm very excited to start my Studio Ghibli movie watching as well. And then I read Once Upon a K-Prom. This is the last one that was part of my Koreathon TBR. This one is another arc. This one comes out May 17th. This is by Cat Cho. I rated this one at 3.75 stars. I really enjoyed this one as well. Although to me, the main conflict and you know how the main conflict was going, or what the main conflict was going to be, was pretty evident right from the very beginning. So to me, it's kind of like, how do people not kind of realize that this is what's going to happen, or this is probably what's happening? But I really enjoyed this one. Again, one that is very heavily K-drama inspired type thing. It also features a main character, or the love interest, that is a member of a very popular K-pop group. So it's also about friendships and family, and your own family aside from the romance as well. A lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Very cute, but more of the lower to mid YA type story. And then I read another manhwa. This is Goodbye in Law by Gyogyo Park. I wasn't planning on picking this up, but I saw this and I saw that it was finished, so I was like, okay, let's read it. And I rated this one at 4.75 stars. This was a lot of fun. It was also very funny. So we are following the two main characters who were sent back in time to when they were 18 in high school, after their siblings who had gotten married got into an accident on the way to their honeymoon. They actually didn't have like the best kind of relationship when they were in high school, because the girl, she actually had to transfer during their, I think, third year after something happened. He's also kind of directly related to it, or he's kind of related to it too. And so it's them trying to figure out how to save their siblings by trying not to have them meet, so that they won't get married and they won't get into the accident. It's also very hilarious, but it also deals with a lot of topics, so check the trigger warnings as well, because it involves, you know, stalking, kidnapping, toxic relationships, of course, accidents and death of relatives or a death of a sibling. So I really enjoyed this one. I had a lot of fun reading it. I'm gonna show you some of the parts that were so funny, especially when they were showing us like either drained or tired, or when they get really serious and intense. It's hilarious. I had a lot of fun reading this one. And then the final book that I finished for March is Skin of the Sea by Natasha Bowen. This one I think was in my February TBR, but I wasn't able to get to it, so I decided to read it for this month when I was trying to figure which book I'm going to read. Ended up reading this one at 3.75 stars. This is, I think, a 2021 release, like a late 2021 release. This is kind of like a Little Mermaid retelling. I found myself a little confused with like the world itself, like how it works. The different gods, they were talking about different things. I felt like there was just some holes with the world building. I still really enjoyed like kind of the adventure. It's kind of like what do you call it, when they go to an adventure and they experience like different kinds of adversities along the way. There's a lot of really heavy topics on with the heroes. Also check the trigger warnings, and there's quite a bit of gore and violence as well, even though it is YA. This is the first book in a series, so yeah, that is gonna see when Natasha Bowen, and those are all of the books that I read for March. I read quite a few books this one, and I think a large part of that is because of the create-a-thon, and I think also because after the create-a-thon I kind of just like been reading books kind of one after the other compared to how it had been for February. So I finished quite a few this month and had quite a few favorites as well. So that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I had a pretty good reading month, and with oh my god, we're done with the first quarter of this year. I will be doing a quarterly stats video, like a quarterly wrap up, and seeing where I am in terms of my reading for this year so far. But yes, that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know how your reading went this month, what your favorite reads are, and I will see you on my next one.